Elon Musk makes the Babylon Bee go viral. Parler's suit against Amazon Web Services looks promising. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden trust racism more than science. These stories and more in your January 12th Not So News Update. In an article posted yesterday, the Babylon Bee had a satire article saying evil fascist dictator censored and voted out of office. Elon Musk responded by saying a lot of people are going to be super unhappy with West Coast high techs as the de facto arbiter of free speech. This in response to the multiple claims of conservatives being taken off of large social media. In another similar story, we have Not the Bee, who's a partner to the Babylon Bee, stating that Instagram just pulled one of our posts for violence and incitement. It was a screenshot of Twitter's trending topics. The irony is beautiful. In the article, they say, tech overload, Instagram yanked one of our posts for violence and incitement, and the irony is so thick you can cut it with a knife. The post Instagram removed was a screenshot of fellow tech overlord Twitter's trending section from the article titled, Really? The day after permanently banning Trump for inciting violence, Twitter allows Hang Mike Pence to trend. I think what we're just seeing a lot of it with these tech companies is just people being upset about the blatant hypocrisy in who they're banning and who they're not. After the riots, we see there has been a push to call for impeachment. A Democrat law professor is stating that Trump never actually called for violence. Jonathan Turley states the damages caused by the rioting was enormous, but it will pale in comparison to the damage from the new precedent of a snap impeachment for speech protected under the First Amendment. It would do to the Constitution what the rioters did to the Capitol, leave it in tatters. While I was highly critical of the president's remark, he never actually called for violence or a riot. Indeed, he expressly told his followers to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Such marches are common in both federal and state capitol. With regards to all the calls on different tech platforms for censoring the president's speech, we also see a story from a while ago where Slate had an explicit call for violence. Nonviolence is an important tool for protest, but so is violence. This is just going into the double standard we're seeing across tech and politics. And finally, on the Daily Caller, we see after reported receiving numerous customer complaints about censorship, local internet provider offers to block Twitter and Facebook. Your T1 Wi-Fi reportedly said it would block both platforms for customers who requested such action after being informed that Twitter and Facebook are engaged in censorship of our customers and information. The service provider sent an email to customers according to KREM. I think what we see here is that anyone that's saying that what Twitter, AWS, or Apple or Google are doing is a First Amendment right, we see similar markets that are going to suffer in highly right-wing areas for the same reason that they are just going to stop access to those platforms. From Fox Business, we see that Parler sues Amazon for suspending app from cloud service, claims antitrust violation and breach of contract. In an article, they state alternative social media platform Parler filed a lawsuit against Amazon on Monday following Amazon Web Services' decision to suspend Parler from its cloud hosting service following last week's deadly riot at the U.S. Capitol. Parler is seeking a temporary restraining order to keep AWS from blackballing Parler and claims Amazon or AWS is violating the Sherman Antitrust Act in the filing. Checking out the filing, I think the one thing to note is the section fine. Thus, AWS is violating Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act in combination with defendant Twitter. AWS is also breaching a contract with Parler, which requires AWS to provide Parler with a 30-day notice before terminating services, rather than the less than 30-hour notice AWS actually provided. Finally, AWS is committing intentional interference with prospective economic advantage given the millions of users expected to sign up in the near future. So obviously this is from the court filing, not from their actual contract, but assuming there was that 30-day notice portion in their original contract, I have a hard time believing that there won't be a decision done for Parler. My only question is whether they will settle in or outside of court. I really hope Parler doesn't just take an agreement and does put these big tech companies on the stand. From the Daily Caller, we see that West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin tells Brett Baird that Democratic push to impeach Trump is ill-advised. I think the other thing to note is the impeachment does require a 2/3 vote, and with the current 50-50 split, I think it's going to be a hard time getting a conviction for Trump, and we're just going to see what happened with the initial first impeachment. In a similar idea, we have Huffington Post saying that Congress can expel members who supported riot. This is going after members of the House and the Senate who are upset that some of their colleagues supported and encouraged violent mob that stormed Capitol last week. They can do something about it. They can kick them out. The Constitution gives Congress clear authority to punish the members and to expel them. The House and Senate have used the expulsion power only rarely, however, partly because disgraced members tend to resign. And Democrats seem more focused on impeaching Trump for a second time for inciting the insurrection. The president can cast doubt on the election for weeks, and then directed rioters to march on the Capitol, telling them if they didn't fight like hell, they would lose their country. I think we see just a double standard here, that any member of House or Senate, when there is a vote, has the right to vote in favor or against. I think it's a very scary claim to say that by voting to object, that's grounds to expel them. Finally, according to the Daily Wire, Ron Paul was apparently locked out of his public Facebook page. He states, with no explanation other than repeatedly going against our community standards, Facebook has blocked me from managing my page. Never have we received notice of violating community standards in the past, and nowhere is the offending post identified. The only thing we posted on Facebook today was my weekly Texas Straight Talk column, which I published every week since 1976. I think this just goes into, if you see any claims out there that they're only targeting QAnon or fringe conspiracy Republicans, Ron Paul has been one of the largest public figures within the Republican Party for the last couple decades. So, it just seems like overreach to me. Recent posts on Twitter from Biden and Harris seem to imply that they are not going to be "quote unquote" trusting the science. From Biden, we see our priority will be Black, Latino, Asian, Native American-owned small businesses, women-owned businesses, and finally having equal access to resources needed to reopen and rebuild. This is in respect to giving financial aid to businesses that had to close due to COVID. I think notably you see giving every single minority, women, everything except white men. This seems to be clear and blatant systemic racism. With Kamala Harris, we have the first 100 days of the Biden-Harris administration will focus on getting control of this pandemic, ensuring vaccines are distributed equitably and free for all. Once again, I don't care how the vaccines are distributed by race or gender. I care that we're trusting the science and giving it to whoever is most likely to die from this pandemic. There's been so many calls for how many lives are on Trump's hands. I'm asking Kamala Harris, how many lives do you want on yours? And this is your January 12th Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more of your daily updates. Have a good one.